Okay, can everyone hear me? Yes, okay. So for all of the judges, I am the first speaker on the affirmation. My name is Stuti Shelat. I am representing Granite Bay High School. So just a quick housekeeping thing. If you guys have POIs, just interrupt me. I won't be able to see you. And I believe we have cross-ex, so that's 2 minutes over the span of the non-rebuttal speeches. Is that correct? Yes? Okay.
Can someone please post the resolution?
Yeah.
I haven't had a chance to look.
Okay. So the resolution is in. Okay. So I will then start my time. If everyone's ready, just give me a thumbs up. Yes, okay, great. Then I will start my time in 3, 2, and 1. Hello, Judge. My partner and I stand on the firmest affirmation of the resolution resolved. The world would be better off if the United States nationalized Amazon Corporation. Judge, let's go into a couple of definitions. First, we define nationalized as transfer from private to public state control ownership or democratically owned. That is what we define nationalizing something as. And just for some framing of this debate, this is a fact resolution, which means that we are debating the truth of this resolution based on net benefits. So essentially, the affirmation's burden today is to prove that the most amount of benefits would come from a world where the United States nationalized the Amazon Corporation. So with that out of the way, Judge, let's go into the major contentions on the affirmation side. First, we're going to start with unionization. Through nationalization of Amazon, we better ensure that workers are unionized and have a stable source of income. The stories of Amazon's mistreatment of its warehouse workers are nothing new, from having to urinate in bottles, being denied air conditioning, to having every second of their shifts closely tracked with penalties if they don't hit their targets. The COVID-19 virus made things much worse. Workers were expected to clock overtime, even as they say the company wasn't doing enough for them to stay safe during this time of the pandemic. Nationalizing this company would allow Amazon workers to get the same union coverage as postal workers do in the status quo, finally giving workers a voice at the table to negotiate for improved working conditions, proper cleaning and protective equipment during COVID-19, and the wages and benefits that they deserve for doing such essential work. What are the impacts here, Judge? Better working conditions means better quality of life. These workers now have the bargaining ability to no longer work in these substandard conditions in which they are literally succumbing to this disease and also dying from the terrible conditions that this monopoly has implemented on them. So what we see under the affirmations world is a world where workers have a better quality of life. Amazon employs 950,000 workers in the status quo in the United States. All of those workers would have substantially more healthy lifestyles and much better quality of life. This is a massive impact in today's round. We also stop the labor shortage in the status quo. The majority of job quits that are leading to the labor shortage in Amazon right now, and which is causing supply chain issues in Amazon right now, is because of poor working conditions. The Hill in 2021 tells us that it's not a labor shortage necessarily. It's a wage and workers' rights shortage that is leading to that labor shortage. By increasing workers' rights on the affirmation, we incentivize people to rejoin the workforce and stop the current supply chain falls that we are seeing and which are caused by the labor shortage. So what we see here is an overall net benefit that comes from an increase of workers' rights. Judge, the second point is supply chain stability. The key task of a publicly owned Amazon. So a publicly owned Amazon in this time of COVID-19, the key task of this organization would be to maintain the supply chain so that it can continue delivering the necessities that people rely on, with priority given to those items. A nationalized Amazon would end the massive supply chain crashes under the current Amazon monopolization system. Under a nationalized Amazon system, there will no longer be an incentive to cut corners in order to make money, right? There is no longer the profit incentive that the current Amazon company has. A nationalized Amazon would allow for further efficiency and a focus on stable supply chains. More stable access to necessary goods and services would come from this. We would see more stable access and a stable supply chain for things that are absolutely necessary in the status quo, whether that's medicines like insulin that save people's lives, whether that's food delivery in the status quo. All of these things are going to be, the supply chains for all of these necessities are going to be much stronger under the affirmation. Now, our third point is about AWS, which is Amazon Cloud Services, which are currently a threat to national security, which is solved under the affirmation. AWS, the highest percentage of government servers are reliant on Amazon. Our United States government is on the hymn of Amazon. In the status quo, according to Amazon itself, mission workloads for scientific, security, and citizen service agencies across the federal government are running on AWS. AWS is Amazon Web Services. They quietly have secured a national security agency, the NSA, cloud, which is a computing contract, and they're reportedly worth up to $10 billion according to NextGov. Nationalizing Amazon would fix this massive issue where we currently have this security threat. Now we will not have that one corporation that is able to shut down the servers of the government. Amazon literally has the ability right now to shut down key servers for programs that the government has. Right now, Jeff Bezos can bring the entire country, bring the largest country in the world to its knees with the push of a button. The NSA, the CIA, the Department of Defense, the Department of State, almost all of these government functions are all run by Amazon Web Services, which is Amazon's server management division. A single private corporation owns the servers that sensitive government information is stored in. It is very, very important that we mend this situation. It's a threat to the United States to have a single company or person having this power. The impact here is that Amazon can currently leverage their massive power for political purposes if they want to. We end that. We do not let Amazon exploit this power that they have over the United States government. The fourth contention, Judge, is accountability for international law. Currently, we see that Amazon is not beholden to international law because it is a corporation. Historically, we have seen corporations break international law. For example, Nestle, Nike, and a bunch of other companies like this internationally have indulged in child labor, forced labor, all of these terrible, terrible things. And they're able to continue this because they are no longer held accountable, right? They are not held accountable in the status quo. If the United States now nationalizes Amazon, they are now responsible for these actions, and they can be held accountable for this kind of labor around the world. They are now held to a standard because they are a country. The impacts here are that we are stopping worker and environmental humanitarian abuse around the world by Amazon, and we can see a massive impact coming out of this. For all of these reasons, you vote on the affirmation. Thank you.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Maya Young. Oh, can you hear me, by the way? Okay, awesome. Again, my name is Maya Young. I'll be the first speaker for the negation from Los Altos, where I'll be reading 2 sheets for the negation and then going on to answer the affirmation case in the order that it was read. All right. Is anyone not ready? Okay, my time starts now. I strongly negate the resolution that the world would be better off if the USA nationalized Amazon Corporation. Let's get straight into the first disadvantage, which is going to be about the economy. In the status quo, we see that Amazon already has in place a sophisticated pathway for product creation, delivery, and shipment. They have sophisticated information technology, an extensive network of warehouses, multi-tier inventory management, and an excellent transportation, which provides some cheap costs to consumers in the status quo. We also see that secondly, Amazon is not a monopoly in the status quo. Its real market share of its real target market is about like 6% when compared to other retailers because it relies on and boosts local businesses. So it doesn't have total control of the economy. However, with the what would happen if the USA nationalized the Amazon Corporation is a couple of really bad things. Firstly, it's going to create a total monopoly by developing set prices. We see that when the USA nationalizes a corporation, they can essentially set prices for this model that is Amazon. It also hurts the ability of other businesses to enter the market. The point of nationalization is to maintain stable prices that are lower than other prices, which leads to no one else being able to enter the market due to entrance costs and being unable to compete with the USA. Secondly, however, we see that the US management can lead to restrictions on efficiency. Owners of private firms benefit directly when innovation reduces costs and boosts profits, and bureaucrats usually lack such a clear financial incentive to improve performance. So, i.e., the US is not going to be incentivized to like increase productivity. Thirdly, we also see that the government cannot manage utilities as well as private businesses. For example, they struggle to merely run the website healthcare.gov to be the official healthcare exchange that would allow residents to compare prices of healthcare plans, identify if they qualify for federal subsidies, and enroll in a chosen plan because their server couldn't handle it and their technology was underdeveloped. The website was created poorly and because of like their mismanagement and even went down in a matter of 2 hours. So the US would horribly mismanage Amazon if they nationalized it. We also see that nationalization in general has failed the economy and will continue to fail again if the USA were to nationalize Amazon. For example, when China nationalized their tech companies, the result was significant costs in the form of a higher tax burden and higher employment costs following nationalization. And this harm to Amazon is going to lead to a couple of other harms, such as damaging small businesses. We see that Amazon privately invested tens of billions of dollars in 2020 to help small businesses flourish and hundreds of millions to help worldwide small businesses flourish, which the US does not have a policy of doing so. We also see that Amazon is good for local markets. Morgan Stanley found that Amazon's presence in metropolitan areas is a boon for local labor markets in areas where they produce, boosting job growth more than the national average. They also offer small businesses a platform on their website to sell their products at whatever price they want, i.e., not controlled by the US government. However, this is going to end under nationalization because, again, the US is setting prices, which means small businesses can't get the money they need and can't even enter the market. We see, secondly, that nationalization can also destroy innovation because, one, it deters people from coming to Amazon. The prospect of working for a state agency is really minimal because it doesn't pass on the benefits of its money. And also, we see that this decreases business confidence because businesses don't want to develop if they fear being taken over by the government at any minute. Because nationalizing a huge corporation like Amazon is a precedent that they can just like take over whatever corporation they want just because they're the US government. The impacts of this first is going to be the issue of economic downturn. We see that Amazon has created more jobs than the US in the last decade than any other companies. So it's key to providing employment in the first place. And it's also the issue of less innovation, particularly in small businesses that are also key to the economy. The second impact is that of jobs and poverty, because ensuring that people at least have jobs in the first place is key to keeping them out of poverty, ensuring that they have some form of wage, which they might not even get, again, because the US horribly mismanages their companies and their organizations and even simple websites. Now, the second argument for the negative is going to be the issue of the counterplan. I know they mentioned that this is a fact round, but this is kind of proposing what we could do rather than like worrying about nationalizing Amazon. There are other ways to solve these issues. For example, the United States federal government should pass the Protecting to Right Organized Act and fund the Workers' Rights Program. And essentially, what this would do is solve for worker rights through regulations, allowing that's what the Protecting the Right to Organize Act would do, is like allowing these workers to organize and unionize against things like Amazon if they aren't being treated properly, as well as funding the Workers' Rights Program, which allows which basically funds lawyers for employees, so they're more able to easily sue against their employers like Amazon if they treat them horribly. And this is essentially showing that we don't really need to nationalize Amazon to make the world a better place when we have all these other programs that can solve. So there's no point in voting for the AF. Now let's go on to the affirmative case. First, I'd like to stop with the top of case. I know, again, like this whole issue of counterplans and fact rounds has been a little contentious. Basically, what we're trying to do is weigh policy options because, again, if there is a better world than the world of the AF, then you should be voting for that world, i.e. the next world would be better off if the USA did not nationalize Amazon Corporation. But now let's get into the meat of the debate, which is going to be about their advantages. The first one is on unionization, and the overview to this is that the counterplan one solves for unionization, but furthermore, there are other. Furthermore, the nationalization of Amazon is only going to cause more damage for worker rights or just worker quality of life in general. Again, just to extend the point that the counter plan does, or the alternative programs that can be passed in the negation world are going to better solve for worker rights, like forcing them to urinate in bottles or work overtime. However, on the link level about seeing that like we can, that workers can get better union coverage as postal workers, we see that again, extend the argument from the disadvantage that even if the government has good intentions, they're historically bad at management, that historically nationalization has failed and has only led to the loss of jobs, which means they can't even worry about the quality of their job if they don't have a job, if they don't have a wage in the first place. They're not even able to afford to unionize or whatnot, which means that like leaving them under Amazon's control is still going to be better than leaving them under the US's control with a history of mismanagement. Additionally, we also see the government can also be bad in certain situations. It's very corrupt and sometimes actually forces bad working conditions upon its people, especially when there's such like low funding and whatnot. Now, on the second contention about the issue of the supply chain, basically they talk about, I think, how the supply chain is threatened because of like the issue of like a labor shortage and whatnot. But we see that there's not really going to be a supply chain issue in the status quo because Amazon actually mostly offers products from other corporations, not their own. They have strong supply chains right now. Like additionally, like we argued before, like Amazon offers platforms for small businesses and whatnot, so they have their own way to create products and not worry about like the supply chain that Amazon has. It's not going to massively crash just because Amazon provides platforms for these small businesses and whatnot. We see that the supply chains are actually going to be better in a world where Amazon is privately owned or not owned by the US federal government, because again, the US mismanages, is going to set these prices, prevent other businesses from competing and like having a good price, prevent small businesses from growing competing. Finally, the last argument that the affirmation reads is about the issue of the AWS or Amazon Cloud Services. Now the argument here is that giving the state full control over servers is bad. Mismanagement means that server crashes are likely. The first argument here is that Amazon is just not going to shut down the servers of the government. Like there's no point in doing that. That would lead to huge backlash. But the potential threat when Amazon has never shown it's going to backlash against the US does not mean that the US should take full control. Furthermore, we also see that the US has other service providers such as AT&T, electricity grid managers like P&G, all have control over this. So like Amazon Cloud Services is not the basis of the US functioning. And the final argument is that like having all this data that Amazon has, if the US takes over it, that can actually be a huge threat because the US has a history of surveilling people through technology, and taking over Amazon could actually lead to more surveillance and worse privacy. And finally, on the third contention about international law, we see that this is not going to happen. The US is actually worse because they disobey international law quite frequently, which means that the impact that they have is additionally, the impact that they have is way blown up because Amazon isn't committing worldwide abuses. And even so, there's no reason why they would stop under the corrupt and frequently disobeying international law United States. So for all these reasons, I strongly urge a vote for the negation.
Okay, I'm starting a minute of cross. Okay, so starting now. So you talk about how the United States, basically their servers are going to shut down. But if the United States is like obtaining the same servers that Amazon uses in the status quo, how is it going to be any less efficient than what already exists for Amazon?
Because we'd argue that the management of the servers, it's what's going to like not be able to keep up for demand. For example, we see massive increases in the need to access online platforms and electricity, which they aren't going to be able to account for, which is why their platforms are essentially like overrun. Like we give you the example of healthcare.gov and also how the example of like there's mismanagement of companies in China. So yeah.
Okay, and so you talk about you're giving a CP, but like and you're saying like the right to workers, but how does like simply funding lawyers for employees, how is that enough to actually combat like a massive conglomerate that has like basically billions upon trillions of dollars to fight unionization? How is that enough?
The first part of the bill bans lobbying against unions, which is like a key part of it. That's like going to prevent them from using this massive corporate power. And also it gives them like free representation for the people who are trying to be represented against these corporations, which is the part about funding the workers' right to like work program. Yeah.
Okay, it's a minute of cross. Okay. So, all right, if everybody's ready, I'll start my time in 3, 2, 1. Hello, Judge. Today I stand on the firmest affirmation of today's resolution result. So the first thing I'm going to be doing is going over the negation's case and tell you why their case doesn't stand. So the first point they bring up is about how we're going to have this massive problem because the United States is not going to be able to properly run Amazon as a whole because they're inefficient. And they give the example of healthcare services. Now, I'd like to point out that the example of healthcare services really is only has a problem and only is inefficient when it's not properly funded, right? So they give, let's talk about Obamacare for a second, because we see that it's not properly managed when we don't have full funding. Whereas with the Amazon, not only is it making a profit that can go back into running our servers well, but also we're obtaining the same servers that Amazon has been using the entire time. There's nothing that's fundamentally changing about the way Amazon is run, because the only thing that's being changed is that the actual servers themselves are now just going to be run by the government, right? Nothing's fundamentally changing in the way the servers are run. We also see that our military is we look at examples of structures within the United States government that are well funded, right? The military is very well funded. It's very efficient. We also see our firefighters are very well funded, and thus they're more efficient. We also see the examples of other nations in the entire world, in the world that have good funding. Take, for example, the NHS, right? The NHS is a bureaucratic system, but they're also able to have good functionality because they are well funded. When you have massive profits from Amazon that is now going back into being reinvested back into the nationalized Amazon that the United States would have, you have extremely well funding, and you have better efficiency, and the money that isn't used to be reinvested back into Amazon can now be reinvested back into other public sectors within the United States. So any excess money that we can give can actually be used to better the efficiency of things like Obamacare, things like other healthcare services within the United States. So on balance, we better improve efficiency, because at the root of it, efficiency is based on funding. We are improving funding because we have more profits to the United States government. Okay, so they also talk about how we're going to be able to set the prices. Now, this is a mischaracterization of what nationalizing Amazon would actually do, because basically what Amazon is, it's a marketplace, right? So a small business has the ability to set their own price and put it on the platform, right? It's the actual small business themselves that dictate the price that they want to set for their own product. But the United States nationalizing Amazon wouldn't have control over all of the prices that the small businesses pay, right? All Amazon does in the status quo, and all Amazon would do if it was nationalized, is host the marketplace by which small businesses sell their goods online, right? So there's no reason to believe that the United States will intervene and set prices for all of the goods that are sold on the Amazon platform. But not only that, but the United States arguably has no profit incentive on balance, right? So we're not going to make things more expensive or have or we're not going to make things more expensive because there's no reason to, right? We don't have this profit incentive driving us to make the maximum amount of money. So this idea that we're going to set prices and things are going to be more expensive doesn't really make a lot of sense. Now, they also talk about higher employment costs with nationalized services. Now, I argue that the higher employment costs with nationalized services is because we have better unionization, which actually supports our point, right? When we have better working conditions for our workers, we have better access to goods and services. We have better access to things like healthcare. Yes, we're going to be spending more money on balance, but also we see that that is a net benefit to the United States, to the globe. And in the status quo, right, we see this massive excess of profit that is unbalanced in Amazon right now, right? We see the CEO of Amazon reaps a significant amount of profits that isn't actually needed in the hands of one person. Should we maybe potentially have higher employment costs, but that's also being reinvested back into the workers? We see that on balance, we have better working conditions, better quality of life. Okay, so they say that there's going to be jobs and poverty because the United States is mismanaged. But again, this relies on the idea that it won't run properly. But number one, we're still functioning under the same servers that existed for Amazon. But number two, we see that well-funded programs do actually run efficiency. We tell you the military, we tell you firefighters, and we also give you the example of the NHS in other countries. The only example they brought up is Obamacare, which is massively underfunded within the United States. Okay, they also run a CP. They say that we're going to give rights to workers instead. Now, I argue that number number one, today's a fact round. We shouldn't really be running a CP, but even if you don't buy that, let's tell you why their CP doesn't work as well. Number one, the thing that they're doing to allow for better workers' rights is first funding lawyers for employees. No matter how much we fund, there's no feasible way to fund lawyers enough to counteract the massive profits that Amazon makes, right? It has this massive profit and massive incentive to shut down and squash any lawsuits that arise. Even if we have some public lawyers, like public defenders, which arguably we already have in the status quo, that's not going to be enough. But further, we see better unionization and better rights for workers that exist within nationalized industries today. We see that best supports from unions are for industries that are nationalized. This includes the teachers union. This includes firefighters. We see that the best unions are for nationalized industries. They also talk about how they're going to ban lobbying, but the reason why the reason why unionization is squashed in Amazon today is not solely because of lobbying. They're not actually solving for isn't just because of lobbying, but it's also because of the money that Amazon has to squash the actual lawsuits themselves. Lobbying is simply stopping policy from being passed. That's not what we're arguing today, right? They're talking about banning lobbying. If they're already passing it, any lobbying further is not going to actually address the issue. And it's not just on lobbying, but it's on actual surveillance of workers that want to unionize and the ability to spend massive, copious amounts of money and funnel that into any lawsuit that would exist. Okay, so now let's go on to rebuild our case. So our first point was about unionization. We say that we better solve for unionization with the nationalized industries. They basically say that they solve themselves. And that they're allowing for the right to workers. But again, we tell you that they don't solve for we don't solve for improving the rights to workers because their plan text only funds lawyers for employees and bans lobbying, right? Lobbying isn't really the main issue when you look at the actual lawsuits that exist and the actual surveillance of Amazon to squash efforts to unionize. Also, we see that nationalized industries on balance have better unionization. We solve for better. They say that we aren't going to be able to manage Amazon. Again, you flow across the same arguments that I've been making continuously in today's debate. We see that well-funded national programs actually are able to function fine, right? It's just the United States not giving enough funding to these programs. But all of the funding that comes from Amazon is going to be reinvested back into running it better. They also tell us that, the government is also corrupt, but the government doesn't have an incentive to maximize their profit at the expense of their workers, right? The government, the main interest that the government needs to be upholding here and will uphold is the interest of the people. The idea that the government is corrupt, Amazon is more corrupt. And we also see that Amazon as a whole now is posing a massive national security issue and now has the ability to leverage this for their own interests, which inherently is a harmful thing. For those reasons, I urge an affirmation ballot. Thank you.
Okay, I think we have 2 minutes of flex time that we're just probably going to use as prep time right now, if that's okay with everyone. Okay, sounds good. Okay, I think that is pretty much time. So the order is going to be, I will quickly touch on, oh, sorry. Hi, my name is Kira Chatwin. I'm the second speaker for the negation from Los Altos, and I will first be going over our two contentions in order, and then I will be addressing the affirmations points. Okay, 8 minutes. Is anybody not ready? Okay, my time starts now. First, let's go to our disad on the economy. The overview here is that the affirmative is going to ruin Amazon in efficiency because it takes it under the control of a very inefficient government. Extend that the status quo is good right now. They have very, very good efficiency because they have very sophisticated pathways for shipment and delivery, and they constantly keep it up to date by reinvesting into these pathways, which is how we see that Amazon is able to continue on the rate it is. The only risk that Amazon decreases in its economic ability to function is under the affirmation. Now, I tell you that this will happen because of two reasons. First, they put it under government mismanagement. We've seen that this has happened in the past. For example, we give you the similar situation of healthcare.gov, which was essentially another big server platform that came under government control and absolutely failed. Now, they tell you that this is simply because it was underfunded and that institutions like the military are going to be more like the military. But the thing is, the military is very distinct from a technological platform. In order for a technological platform to function, you have to understand the technological intricacies that go into the platform and allow it to function. And fundamentally, Amazon's nationalization is going to lead to them not being able to do that because they simply do not have the technological capabilities within the government system and the innovational capabilities within a government system in order to be able to keep up with necessary technological advances, which are going to end up turning this. Just look to the US Post Office. It's the most comparable system to Amazon and is extremely underfunded and inefficient. There's no way that that would be better. Now, they tell you the NHS is another example of a system that's good, but the wait times in the NHS are absolutely huge. The bureaucracy of the situation just makes it almost impossible to go to the doctor in the first place, which I would argue is even worse than any situation they have now. The second reason you're going to be rejecting them is because it's going to decrease innovation in the world of the affirmation. We give you two reasons for this that go unrefuted. First, it deters the top engineers, the top technological minds from coming to Amazon because essentially they're working for a state agency, which means that normally if you work for a company that's for profit, your wages go up as your business increases. When you work for a state agency, you're given a fixed wage, which means that even if your company or even if the corporation does well, you don't get any of the benefits from your pay, which means that we see that people just don't want to work for state agencies, which is why state agencies just aren't up to date in innovation. Furthermore, we tell you that it decreases business confidence at large because what happens? The state can essentially come in and take over your business at any moment. Are you going to want to start a business anymore? The answer is most likely no, because it decreases this confidence much more. But finally, we tell you that nationalization is going to be very, very bad for the management of the companies overall and for the investment of these companies into market systems because it hurts the ability of other businesses to enter the market when the whole market is controlled by a state-managed system, which decreases competition and decreases the ability of businesses to innovate at large, which then slows our overall economy. Now, they get really caught up in these scenarios about how, Amazon is going to have profits, which are going to fund the servers, which are going to make it all better. But the thing is, if you don't have the people to innovate for you, it doesn't matter how much money you have because simply that's not going back into it. Furthermore, there's a double bind scenario here. Either one, you buy that the government is going to take all the profits and invest it into things like, Medicare, as they talk about, or two, they're going to reinvest it back into the economy, which means that there's fundamentally no difference. Nothing's going to be benefited for them. You only risk losing innovation. Now, this is going to be the most important impact in today's round because economic downturn is the reason for why people don't have jobs, for why job conditions are bad. When the overall economy grows, companies can afford to pay their workers more, which overall boosts job growth. But furthermore, we see that Amazon boosts local job growth and reinvest into the economy, which is essential for the operation of Amazon. Either you buy that the government is going to reinvest into the economy, or you buy that the government is going to have enough funds to maintain itself. In either world, you're losing investment in the economy at large, which leads to a net decrease in the net harms for the world. Now let's go into the counterplan. They first tell you that the counterplan shouldn't be considered in a fact round. I tell you that the round just asks us to evaluate if the world would be better off if it nationalized Amazon. Now the thing is, if there is a better world than if the US if a better world exists in the US where the US didn't nationalize Amazon, then I would argue that effectively negates the resolution, because we're seeing that the world would not be better off because there is a better alternative absent the affirmative. Now, they tell you that funding lawyers isn't going to resolve anything because Amazon has a lot of money. The thing is, having a lot of money doesn't mean you magically make lawsuits go away. We specifically ban lobbying, which is where you put the money in order to get over these lawsuits. And furthermore, we increase union protections, which means that these companies can no longer smush the unions as they talk about. But finally, we increase the investment into lawyers. These aren't public defenders. These are nonprofit workers or workers who are going to be working for these corporations that are going to defend these people for free, which means that they get a much greater chance of actually winning these lawsuits and winning against these corporations, which means that they're taken down, which is fundamentally what the affirmative argues. If we can achieve this without losing all of the economic harms that happens when Amazon is no longer allowed to be innovative, then we're going to be seeing that this is the best world. And in this round, you're going to be voting for the best world. I think we'll take it in cross if that's okay. Now let's go into the affirmations case. First, the overview to their unionization advantage is that this is fundamentally going to be solved entirely through the world of the negative, through increasing the power of unions. And we see that this is probably outweighed significantly by the economic detriments that the affirmation is going to cause anyway. First, they tell you that there's going to be national programs that are going to function fine. For example, Amazon is going to reinvest in funding. But the thing is, mismanagement means that the government is not going to be able to resolve any of these union problems, because if they have to deal with unions, then they're going to have to spend a significant amount of money, which we tell you that the government simply isn't going to have to deal with. Furthermore, they tell you that they don't have an incentive to abuse their workers. But the thing is, we decrease Amazon's incentive to abuse their workers as well by imposing more fines through the unionization process as well, which I would argue is the same thing. But furthermore, the government also doesn't attract the same workers as in normal situations because they simply do not have the ability or the management in order to attract technological minds necessary for innovation. Now, the overview to the second contention is that Amazon has strong supply chains right now. The only world in which these supply chains are disrupted is the world of the affirmation, in which you institute government control over a system that has been proven to be much more effective when it is privately managed. They tell you that it's going to be a lot better because Amazon is going to end massive supply chain crashes, but I would argue that this is entirely false. They also go for this contention about how Amazon is going to shut down all the servers of the government. This is obviously false for for three reasons. First, we see that state control is going to state control over the servers isn't going to be any better because their servers are badly managed. Just look to the server that crashed already because the government management. I would argue that if a server is going to crash in any world, it's probably going to be under their world. But secondly, we're going to be seeing that it's non-unique. Fundamentally, AT&T, other service providers, PG&E, electricity grid managers, all have the same sort of control. And finally, there is no incentive because nobody wants to cripple our nation's infrastructure, and there's no reason why PG&E would why Amazon is going to do this in any world. Then on the third contention, briefly, there is no impact to this contention. They conceded that the US also disobeys international law. Don't let them extend this into their final speech. So because the world of the negative is the world that adequately resolves for union protection, that is adequately able to resolve for a strong and resilient and innovative economy, I strongly urge a vote for the negative in today's round. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to start a minute of cross now. Okay, so if Amazon is running as efficient as you say it is in the status quo, then why do we see a massive backlog of goods and a massive shortage supply in the status quo because of Amazon?
I would argue that these supply shortages are not necessarily because of Amazon's production, because a lot of services just host their products on Amazon, and that's where the backlog is happening, not Amazon. I'd say that Amazon's delivery process, which is the one that the US is essentially trying to encompass, is probably very efficient.
Okay.
And the production of their independent goods is also good. Oh, sorry.
Thank
Yeah.
you. And then, so if engineers won't want to go to like the nationalized Amazon because of poor pay, don't we give them even better pay if we're allowing them unionized labor, better like services and better healthcare under like a nationalized service?
See, that's not usually what happens, because when private companies do really well, like profits get boosted significantly. Like people pay so much money for like the top tech engineers, right? That's why they make so much money. And that's the reason why they're incentivized to go to private corporations.
Okay, thank you.
I believe Flex is up for the affirmation. Yeah, again, my name is Maya Young. I'll be giving the final speech for the negation. I'll give a short overview on why we're winning, talk about the issue of mismanagement, and then kind of talk about the app and weighing, but I'll definitely be sure to talk about like which points I'm on as I go. I'd recommend flowing this on a new sheet if you are taking notes. All right, is anyone not ready? All right, my time starts now. Judges, the overview to the round is that it's not going to matter if quality of work improves marginally under a corrupt United States government rather than a corrupt Amazon, if workers can't even get those quality jobs because they're so horribly mismanaged and also just not appealing because of the way they're managed by the government. So again, the main clash in today's debate has been about what the United States government is going to do. Are they going to mismanage and cause Amazon to fail, or are they going to have a perfect takeover of a hugely complex, sophisticated corporation and thus improve worker rights? And we see that NEG proposes a few key reasons as to why the first is true. Historically, the US has failed to manage something as simple as a healthcare website. It crashed within 2 hours, and something similar is very likely to happen with Amazon, which is going to be even more complex, even more sophisticated than this healthcare website. Additionally, there's the issue of, like, as my partner brings up, the poor pay. Workers aren't even going to want to go and work for a nationalized Amazon because, one, they know it's going to be mismanaged as they have precedent for that. And secondly, because they don't offer as much good pay as private organizations, which means Amazon is going to fail under the United States federal government. Additionally, we bring up the point of the counter plan, where we see that a world, even though this isn't necessarily a status quo, a world without nationalization, but a world with the Workers' Rights Fund and with the Protecting to Right to Organize Act can solve for all these issues, because lobbying is the root cause of these issues. The inability to unionize and like sue for your rights is the root cause of these issues. And by funding lawyers and by like regulating Amazon, that is how we're going to address worker issues, not by making.
I think you went on mute.
Sorry, where was the last point you had me at?
It was like legitimately like 1 second.
Okay,
Yeah.
awesome. Thank you. All right. Okay, I have like 2 minutes, a little more left. Okay. All right, resuming time now. Now, on the other hand, the affirmation brings up this point that like the United States is going to be able to make profits from Amazon, but as my partner points out, these profits have historically gone to overfunded programs like the military. Additionally, as the app says, a lot of funds go to the military. On the other hand, national organizations that are more similar to Amazon, such as the post office, have been historically underfunded and poorly run and are even underfunded right now. So when the US takes over Amazon, that's not going to be their top priority in comparison to things like the military. And they're, again, not going to properly management. They're not going to give proper pay to their employees either, which is going to lead to the further failure of Amazon. Now, on the other, a final big scale impact I'd like to talk about is the fact that even if the whole Amazon debate gets confusing about worker rights, we see that even if Amazon nationalization can help the workers, it leads to net harms for the whole world, because we see that mismanagement of prices is going, or of the whole company, and the mismanagement of the efficient, sophisticated technology that Amazon has leads to harms for the consumer, because prices are going to be raised when the efficiency is lost. But additionally, something that goes conceded through the round is that small businesses won't be able able to, nor will want to compete with a national organization. The neg is right, or the affirmation is right, that the United States isn't profit motivated. They're going to set low prices that will do one of two things. Either it's going to be mismanaged, leading to a rise in prices due to a decrease in efficiency and worse for the consumer, or prices remain low and small businesses, on the other hand, are unable to enter that industry and are thus unable to introduce huge innovation to that industry and also support their local economies and support marginalized populations that are running these small businesses. Which means on the weighing level, on the impact level today, the neg is going to be outweighing on magnitude, or the biggest impacts in today's round, which is pretty relevant when we're talking about net benefits. We see that both teams account for workers' rights because the neg has access to these policies, such as, like, again, the Workers' Rights Fund and the Protection on Organizing Act. And additionally, as I mentioned earlier, nationalizing Amazon leads to global detriment to consumers and small businesses due to mismanagement and poor competition. The negative is the internal link to the affirmative. What do you think allows for better working conditions? When companies are doing well and can afford to compensate their workers well, we tell you that decreases in small businesses, decreases in Amazon innovation and function, and inefficiency are going to lead to overall net bad. Don't let the affirmation tell you that the US is going to magically, like, perfectly manage this sophisticated corporation when they've historically underfunded these places and, like, historically just been corrupt and not really helped government employees. So for all these reasons, I strongly urge a vote for the negation.
Okay, can everyone hear me? No, my timer. Can everyone hear me? Yes, okay. So judges, my roadmap for this speech is going to be a couple of observations and then voter issues and why. So if there are no concerns, I'm ready to start. Yes, okay, great. Starting time in 3, 2, and 1. Hello, Judge. My partner and I stand on the firmest affirmation of the resolution resolved. The world would be better off if the United States nationalized the Amazon Corporation. Let's go into a couple of observations. First, let's talk about the negations counterplan. Judge, let's talk about the fact that, first of all, they shouldn't be offering a counterplan. But regardless of that, if we accept their counterplan, it does not solve for the fact that Amazon puts billions of dollars into fighting lawsuits against unionization. What does this mean, Judge? This means that ending lobbying under the negations world, that lobbying is against policy. That isn't against lawsuits, right? So the negation doesn't have any solvency to that counterplan, or that, like, idea that, like, every unionization is going to magically happen under the negation. That is not how this works, right? Ending lobbying under the negation does not unionize workers under Amazon. That is not they cannot access that impact, right? And at the point where the negation does not solve for workers' rights, at that point alone, you vote for the affirmation, because that is a massive impact in this round, and this goes conceded. Judge, let's go into talking about the current Amazon supply chains. This is a very important point.
Discord. Oh, sorry.
Okay, this is a really, really important point that goes conceded in today's debate. And that is the idea that current supply chains in Amazon have been crashing. And that is because there has been a lack of workers' rights. And that has led to a worker shortage, a labor shortage.
Affirmation. POO, stop time. I think the argument that the reason why they have, like, shortages is because of, like, lack of workers' rights is, like, a new link scenario that wasn't brought up. I might just, like, have forgotten. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I believe that is the case. So we've been saying that since the very first speech. I quoted the Hill. I said, it's not a labor shortage, it's a workers' rights shortage that is leading to a labor shortage. I have said that throughout the debate. Cool. Judge's discretion. So okay. So I was at 140, so I'll keep going from there. Okay, starting again, 3, 2, 1. So current supply chain shortages under Amazon are happening because they have not provided workers' rights to their workers. And at the point where the affirmation provides these rights for almost 1 million people in the United States, we win on this impact alone. But Judge, let's go into a couple of further points that emphasize our win today. The second thing here is that they talk a lot about how there is efficiency in Amazon servers right now, right? they talk about the AWS. Let's talk about this. The same technology that Amazon currently has for those servers will be obtained by the government under the affirmations plan, or under the affirmations world, right? Those engineers, those innovators, all of those people that belong to this sector of Amazon will work for the government, right? And if anything, they will have a further incentive to stay under the government because first, they have access to unionization, they have better conditions, they have better pay. So these people have a further incentive to stay there. Now, the problem here is that this idea of like better minds and engineers and innovators, this has been their warranting for talking about inefficiency. Judge, no. The Amazon that is nationalized under the government will have the same efficiency or better efficiency than the current Amazon system, which is backlogged and has so many problems when it comes to their supply chains. So we see, Judge, that this idea of inefficiency is simply unwarranted. Now, the third point here is about state agencies. They tell us that state agencies have no worker incentive. Judge, when this institution has better workers' rights, better wages, better healthcare, they have an absolute incentive to keep working for this institution. Now, there's been kind of a clash about examples in this debate, right? The negation brings up this idea that like, oh, underfunded healthcare.gov, and they bring up the underfunded USPS. The similarity between both of these things is that neither of them make a profit. As my partner brought up in her speech, Amazon brings in a massive profit to the United States government. That means that this will be a very, very funded and efficient system under the government as well. This goes conceded in today's debate. We give you multiple examples, Judge. We give you the example of the NHS in a different country that is very well funded, even if it's a state agency. We bring up the idea of the military in the United States. We bring up veterans programs, firefighters programs. All of these things work under the United States and are still publicly owned utility. They're still owned by the government, right? Like they do not contend these very, very important examples in today's debate. So we win on that point as well. Judge, now let's go into voter issues and impact calculus. Judge, the first point that you vote on is unionization. The affirmation is the only side in today's debate that has actually provided solvency for unionization. We are creating a system of better working conditions and a better quality of life for almost 1 million workers in the United States. Again, the negation's counter plan doesn't do that because they are not solving for the money that Amazon puts into lawsuits. They're only ending lobbying, but that stops policy. That does not stop these lawsuits, right? So at the point where they fail to unionize, we win alone. The second point you vote on, Judge, is the supply chain stability. We are actually allowing for that stable access to be maintained, and Amazon in its current form has not allowed that to happen. The third thing you vote on is the massive security risk that Amazon poses because it has the ability to retaliate against the US because of the massive security monopoly and the server monopoly they have over the US right now. For all of these reasons, you vote on the affirmation. Thank you.